Hi guys, in this video lesson I'll try to explain the grammar on page 43 that we couldn't cover in the classroom at school. But before we start, I would like to revise full and reduced relative clauses that we did in the class. Full and reduced relative clauses are defining relative clauses. But in our book, we call them full relative clauses. But in other books, in the previous books, as you know, as I told you earlier, they are called defining relative clauses. This type of relative clause completes the meaning of the sentence, adds something about the person or thing in the first part of the sentence that we really need to know, something that is essential, something that is important. It makes clear which person or thing we are talking about. Now, let's look at these examples. Marie Curie is the woman who discovered radium. Marie Curie is the woman who or that discovered radium. When we say Marie Curie is the woman, we use definite article here. So the woman here needs to be defined. If you don't continue the sentence, if you finish it here, the meaning will not be complete. Marie Curie is the woman, full stop. That wouldn't make sense. So we need to define what woman, what kind of woman, who exactly. The woman who discovered radium. So this is the definition of the woman, what woman. And another one, another example. This is the house. If you finish the sentence here and say this is the house, it wouldn't make sense or it wouldn't be complete. It would be possible, for example, if you say this is a house. A is indefinite article, but if you use the house, if you use definite article, it means we are defining. We need to define the house. So this is the house which Jack built, or that Jack built. So in these two examples, in both the examples here, the relative clauses are defining. They are telling us exactly what noun, what person, what thing we are talking about. Now, we use the relative pronouns who or that to refer to a person, and we use which or that to refer to a thing or an animal. Who or that to refer to a person, and which or that to refer to a thing or animal. So as you can see, that is used with both animals and things. If the relative pronoun who, which, or that is the object of the verb, we can leave it out. Now this is about full relative clauses only. It's not about non-defining relative clauses that we are going to learn on page 43 of the book. Only about full relative clauses, namely defining relative clauses. If the relative pronoun is object of the verb, we can leave it out. And if we leave it out, we call it a reduced relative clause. If it is the object, but we don't leave it out, we say that this relative clause can be reduced. In the ministry exam, they ask questions like that. Which of the following relative clause can be reduced? Now, let's look at these examples here. These are the new computers which are going to replace the old ones. Which is the relative pronoun, and it's the subject. How we know? Because it comes immediately before the verb. Are going to replace is the verb form, and the relative pronoun comes immediately before the verb. So it's subject. And the old ones is the object. Replace what? They are going to replace the old one, so that's the object. This is called full relative clause, and this cannot be omitted. It cannot be reduced. I mean, the relative pronoun cannot be omitted, cannot be left out, because it's the subject. So whenever it's the subject in a full relative clause, in a defining relative clause, we cannot omit it, we cannot leave it out, or let me say, we cannot reduce this kind of relative clause. Another one, there is the manager who bought the new computers. Who bought the new computers is our relative clause. This here is the relative clause. Who is our relative pronoun? And we know that it is a subject. Why? Because it comes immediately before the verb. This is the verb, bought. Who comes immediately before the verb? So we say that the relative pronoun who is subject. And bought what? Bought the new computers. So that's the object. As you see, this is a very simple form of a sentence, of a clause. Subject, verb, and object. Simple. Subject, verb, object. Subject comes before the verb, and the object comes after the verb. So this is also full relative clause, and the relative pronoun cannot be omitted because it's subject. Okay, and the next example here, these are the new computers which the manager bought last month. These are the new computers which the manager bought last month. So we look at the relative pronoun, which, and we try to find out whether the relative pronoun is object or subject. To do this, first we find the verb. What's the verb? Bought is the verb of the relative clause. So we look immediately before the verb to find the subject. As you can see, we have the manager just before the verb. So the manager is subject because it comes immediately before the verb. So we understand that the relative pronoun which is not the subject. It must be the object because, let me continue, which the manager bought last month. The manager bought what? The manager bought the new computers, and which refers to the new computers, which is the object of the verb buy. The manager is the agent, it's the subject, it's the person who's doing the action of buying. Okay? And what did the manager buy? The manager bought the new computers, and the relative pronoun which refers to the new computers. These are the new computers which the manager bought last month. So we understand that the relative pronoun is object, and this is a full relative clause. It means it's a defining relative clause. So because the relative pronoun which is object, we can leave it out. We can omit the relative pronoun. We can read the sentence like this. These are the new computers the manager bought last month. So which is not necessary. It's not compulsory in the sentence. Okay, why not? Because this is a defining relative clause, and the relative pronoun here, which is object of the verb. So we can omit it, we can reduce it. And this kind of relative clause, we say, can be reduced. Can be reduced. And when we leave out the relative pronoun, when we leave it out, when we erase it, we say this relative clause is reduced, is reduced. If the relative pronoun is still there, we say this relative clause can be reduced. But if it is removed, if it is left out, we say it is reduced. Another example, there is the manager who the company asked to buy the new computers. So first of all, again, we find the verb who the company asked to buy the new computers is the relative clause. This is the relative clause. We find the verb. The verb is ask. Asked to buy the computers. So we find the subject by looking at the word that comes immediately before the verb. And we see that the company is immediately before the verb, comes immediately before the verb, or is placed immediately before the verb. So the company is the subject. So the relative pronoun who cannot be the subject. Cannot. So it must be the object then. There is the manager. The company asked to buy the new computers. So the verb ask has an object. The company asked whom? So the answer is the object. The company asked, the company asked the manager. So the manager is the object. And who refers to the manager, namely the object. And this here, the whole sentence is a relative clause, a defining relative clause. And because the relative pronoun is an object, we can remove it. We can take it out. We can say there is the manager, the company asked to buy the new computers. So we say this relative clause can be reduced. And when we reduce, when we remove the relative pronoun, we say this relative clause is reduced. Okay? So there's something that you need to be careful of. The relative pronoun is either the subject or the object, as we saw in these examples here. So we do not repeat the subject or the object. Namely, Marie Curie is the woman who she discovered radium. So if you are asked, for example, to join the two sentences using a relative pronoun, Marie Curie is the woman is the first sentence, full stop. She discovered radium is the second sentence. Okay, and you are asked to join these two sentences using relative pronoun, relative clause, relative pronoun who, for example. In that case, you use who instead of she. Okay, she is the subject in this clause. We use who instead of she. So when we join the two sentences, we don't use both of them, who and she together. So when we use who to join the two sentences, we don't need she. We don't repeat the subject because who is the subject, she is the subject as well. So we don't repeat it. So we don't write she in the sentence. That's important. If they write she here, for example, if they write the subject as well, in addition to who, that will be wrong. For example, if they ask a question like, which of the following relative clauses is correct, pay attention on this. If they write something like this is not correct. Okay, who is the subject of discovered, of the verb? So we don't need she, we don't repeat it. The second example, this is the house that Jack built. Again, if there are two sentences and you are asked to join the two sentences using relative clause and a relative pronoun, you would have, for example, this is a house or the house, full stop. And the second sentence, Jack built it. So when we join the two sentences using that, we would say this is the house that Jack built. That and it refer to the object, to the house. So we don't need to repeat it because we use that instead of it. So if they write it as well, in addition to the relative pronoun, that will be wrong. Now let's look at these questions, ministry exam questions. The first one is asking, find a reduced relative clause. It's asking the reduced relative clause. Now, we are looking for a relative clause where there is no relative pronoun because it's asking reduce. It means the relative pronoun should be omitted, should be taken out. Okay? So we look at the choices and find the one where there is no relative pronoun. A says it is the company which the students, so we have a relative pronoun here, the company which. So this is not reduced. Which the students are most interested in seeing. Now there is a mistake here, as I taught in the class. The original sentence, I think, I'm not sure, but it should be, it is a company which the students are most interested in seeing, something like that. So the first one is not reduced because there is the relative pronoun here. Okay, the students is the subject and which is the object. We can reduce this sentence, this relative clause, but it is not reduced because the relative pronoun is still in the sentence here. So this is not reduced, but it can be reduced because the relative pronoun is object. And B says it is the company the students are most interested in seeing. Now, as you can see in this one, we don't have a relative pronoun here before the students. So this sentence is reduced. So our correct answer should be B. It's the correct one. But we continue looking at the other choices. C says it is a company who the students are most interested in seeing. Now there is who here, so this is not reduced. Anyway, we don't use who about company. Company is not a person. It should be which, as in choice A. So this is not the correct answer as well. And D says the company who the students are most interested in seeing. The company who the students are most interesting in seeing. Again, there is who here. It's not removed. Anyway, the company who the students are most interested in seeing is not a complete sentence. Something is missing here in D. As you can see in A, B, and C, we have it or it is. It is. So if you don't have it is at the beginning of the sentence is not complete. So our answer is B. And 2, choose a one that could be reduced relative clause. Now, in A, in question 1, it was asking the reduced relative clause, but here it's asking that could be reduced. It is not reduced, but it can be reduced. So it means the relative clause, the relative pronoun is in the sentence, but it must be the object. So we are looking for a relative clause where the relative pronoun is an object. So let's look at A. This is a site in Kurdish and English which aims to encourage international support. Which aims, which is the relative pronoun, but it's the subject, it's not object because aim is the verb and which comes immediately before the verb. So this is subject, so this cannot be reduced. B, this was set up by a group of people who were experts. Who were experts? Who is subject because it comes before the verb. Were is the verb. Who is the subject. We cannot reduce this one. as well. And C, Saving the Citadel is a section which tells. Which is the relative pronoun, tells is the verb. And as you can see, which comes immediately before the verb. So we cannot reduce this relative clause either. So the answer should be then none of these, because none of them can be reduced. In none of them, the relative pronoun is object. Next one. Choose the correct reduced relative clause. We are looking for reduced relative clause. It means there shouldn't be a relative pronoun in the sentence. A printer is an office machine which allows, which is a relative pronoun, so this is not reduced. Anyway, it cannot be reduced as well because it's the subject, not object, because it comes immediately before the verb. It comes immediately before the verb, so it's subject, it cannot be reduced, and it is not reduced. And B says, a help desk advisor is someone who uses the phone to help customers with their problems. Who, relative pronoun, uses is the verb. Again, the relative pronoun comes immediately before the verb, so it's the subject, not object, and it's still there in the sentence. It's not reduced, and it cannot be reduced. C, help desk advisors are people customers contact for advice. Yes, this is a correct relative clause sentence. And as we can see, the relative pronoun is removed. It's omitted. So we say this is a reduced relative clause. This is the correct answer. Help desk advisors are people who customers contact for advice. We can use who here just before customers. Customers is the subject. Contact is the verb. Customers must be the subject because it comes before the verb. So if we use a relative pronoun, we would use it before customers. We would say help desk advisors are people who customers contact for advice. Or that customers contact for advice. The correct answer is C. Okay. And number 4, which one do you think is not correct? Yeah, we are in this question, we are looking for a sentence that is not correct, grammatically not correct. A says the singer who was recovering from flu had to cancel her concert. This is a relative clause. And who was recovering from flu is the relative clause. Who is a relative pronoun. This is correct. The singer who was recovering from flu is a relative clause. But this is a relative clause with extra information because they used commas here. We will learn that on page 43. B says none of them. C says I have 2 sisters, which is used for people, so that's wrong. So this probably is our correct answer, because the question is asking which do you think is not correct. C is not correct because which is used for people, for sisters. I have 2 sisters who I love very much. And also there is another mistake here. The pronoun is repeated. We don't need this pronoun here because we use this one instead of that. Not which, but who would be correct. And D says in the shop window there is a sign which says 10% off. Yes, there is a sign which says, which is used for sign, a sign. So that's correct. This is a correct relative clause sentence. So our answer is C. because it's not correct. And the next one, which of the following sentences can be changed to a reduced relative clause? Yes, it's asking can be changed. It means which of the following relative clauses can be reduced, can be reduced, can be changed to reduced relative clause. It's not asking to find the reduced relative clause. It's asking which of them can be reduced. It means we are looking for the relative clause where the relative pronoun is object. Okay, now let's look one by one. I don't know the lady who helped. Who helped? Helped is the verb. Who must be subject, so we cannot reduce this one. Who helped you with your luggage? Who is subject, so we cannot reduce it. A is not the correct answer. B says, I don't know the lady who helps you with your luggage. Again, who refers to the lady, which is the subject, who helps you. The difference between A and B is the tense only. In A, they used past tense. In B, they used present tense. But both of them are correct sentences. I mean, correct relative clause sentences, but the relative pronoun in both of them is the subject. It means we cannot reduce these two relative clauses. Let's continue. I didn't know the lady who you helped with her luggage. So we find the verb and we see that just before the verb there is you, which means you is the subject and who must be the object. So this can be reduced because the relative pronoun is object, not the subject. I didn't know the lady you helped with her luggage. You helped with her luggage. So this is the correct answer, but we look at D as well. You must never forget the lady who saved your life. Who saved your life? Save is the verb. Who comes immediately before the verb. So who is subject, not object. So this is not correct answer. So our correct answer must be C again. Okay. Now let me continue. Let me go on to the next section, next grammar part. Clauses introduced by when, where, and why. We use when for time. The relative pronoun when is used to refer to time, and when is used to refer to place. Why is used to refer to a reason. Let's look at the examples. Grade 11 was the time when I decided my future career. Was the time when I decided my future career. So I refer to time, that's why I use when here. And in the second example, Whitney College was the place where I studied office skills. I studied office skills there, in that college. So I refer to a place, there. A place was the place where I studied office skills. And the relative pronoun why is used to refer to reason. For example, my interest in IT was the reason why I applied for my new job. Why did I apply for the new job? Because of my interest in IT. So that's the reason why I applied. So we use why for the reason. My interest in IT is the reason why I applied for my new job. So shortly, when for places, when for time, where for places, why for reason. Now we have more examples here. The nouns are not used as a subject or object of the verb. Now that's important. If you are confused, for example, in the exam, whether to use when or which, you should make sure that the relative pronoun is not the subject or the object of the verb. Not the subject, not the object. Not the subject, not the direct object of the verb. That's important. For example, we say 2001 was the year when my daughter was born. When I say when my daughter was born, I refer to the time. Okay? The when refers to time. 2000 year is the time here in the sentence. The time when my daughter was born. So we use when. When is not subject because my daughter is the subject. My daughter is the subject of the verb was born. And 2001 refers to the year. As this is a passive structure, we don't need to look for an object here. 2001 is not the object, it's the time reference, let me say. But we say in 2001 was the year, 2001 was the year which I liked very much. So we look at the relative clause, which I liked very much, which I is the subject, like is the verb. And I is the subject because it comes immediately before the verb. I liked very much. I liked what? So if you want to find the object of the verb, I liked, you ask the question what? I liked what? I liked the year 2001 very much. So 2001 refers to the object, not to the time. It's not a time reference, it's the object. How do I understand? I repeat it once again. I ask the question, what did I like very much? The answer is, I like the year 2001 very much. I is a subject, like is the verb. So ask the question to yourself, what did I like? So you get the answer 2001. So that's the direct object of the verb like. It's the direct object. Okay? I is the subject and 2001 is the direct object. I liked the year 2001 very much. The sentence would be something like this. I liked the year 2001 very much. As you see, 2001 would come immediately after the verb like. It means it's the direct object. And when we join the sentences and we use a relative clause, we say 2001 was the year which I liked very much, which refers to 2001. And 2001 is the direct object of the verb like. So we use which in the sentence, not when. Another example, 2001 was the year which brought good luck to me. Now in this example, which refers to the subject, not object, not a time reference, it's the subject. We find the verb, brought is the verb, and we find the subject by looking what comes immediately before the verb. And we can see that which comes immediately before the verb. So we say which is subject. So it cannot be, we cannot use when instead of which here because it's not time expression, it's not a time reference. It's the subject. In the second example, it's the object. And in the third example, it's the subject. So when the relative pronoun is subject or object, we never use when. We can use when when we refer to time, a date. Okay? 2001 was the year when my daughter was born. Ask the question to yourself. When was my daughter born? When was my daughter born? So it means we are asking the time, okay? The year, the date, or whatever. So here, when, the relative pronoun when, refers to a time expression, a time. That's why we use when. And pay attention that we ask a question using the question word when. So when it is possible to ask the question word when, it means we are talking about a time reference. So you can use when as relative pronoun. But in these two examples, we ask the questions, for example, I liked what? What did I like? I used the question word what. Okay? Not when. Or you can say, which year did I like very much? Which year did I like very much? So we don't use when to ask a question in the sentence. And we don't use the question word when to ask a question in the third example as well. Which brought good luck to me? What brought good luck to me? You use what, or you can ask which year brought good luck to me. We don't use the question word when in these two examples. I think that's clear, inshallah. If not, don't worry, because as you can see now in the ministry exam, they didn't ask questions like that. They ask simple question. I mean, if you see place here and see where, when, why among the choices, most probably the answer is where, because the restaurant is a place. In the ministry exam, they ask questions like that. The first question here is not a ministry exam question. Okay, it's not a ministry exam question. The restaurant where I saw, the restaurant that I saw yesterday is really nice. In this example, I especially put this example here in the first place to show that you need to know whether the restaurant is a subject or object. If yes, we don't use where. We don't use where. In this example, I saw, which I saw. So it is the object of the sentence. I saw what? What did I see yesterday? I saw the restaurant. So this restaurant is a direct object of the verb see. So what did I see? I saw the restaurant. Okay? So we cannot use where in this example. I need to use which or that. So among the choices we have that, not which. So this is our answer then. This is the correct answer. Not where. Be careful. We don't use where because the restaurant does not refer to a place in the sentence. It is the object of the verb see. So we don't use where, we use that or which. As I said, this is not a ministry exam question. In the ministry exam, so far they didn't ask questions like this. They didn't. I hope they won't. But if they do, you should pay attention on whether we are talking the relative pronoun is object or subject. If yes, we don't use where. We don't use when. We don't use why. Okay? We use that or which. And the second example is a ministry exam question. It should be easy. As I said, the restaurant blank I usually have dinner is really nice. The restaurant where I usually have dinner. So ask the question to yourself, like, where do I usually have dinner? Okay? So if you can ask the question, this question using where, it means you need where as relative pronoun. And the next one, I intend to talk about the region blank Upper Mesopotamia lay. Mesopotamia is the subject because lay is the verb. Okay? But you should be careful about the verb lay. Does this verb need an object or not? So if you know that, you can simply say that the verb lay in the sentence here doesn't have an object. So the relative clause, the relative pronoun that I use here should refer to place because the verb lay doesn't need an object. Okay? The verb lay doesn't need an object. So I refer to place. So the answer should be where. I intend to talk about the region where Upper Mesopotamia lay. And next one, number 4. I love this beach. Land and sea meet. Land and sea is the subject, meet is the verb. Land and sea meet. But again, you should pay attention on the verb here. Is it transitive? That means it needs an object, or intransitive. It means it doesn't need an object. So the verb meet can be both, can be transitive and intransitive. We can use the verb meet with an object, also without an object. So in this sentence, I love this beach where land and sea meet. So when I separate the sentences, I would say, for example, land and sea meet, for example, here. So it doesn't need an object in the sentence. For example, let me give another example. Tim and Tom met yesterday. Tim and Tom met yesterday. Tim and Tom is the subject, met is the verb, and there is no object. But if you say, Tim met Tom yesterday, in that case, we have Tim as the subject, Tom as the object. And here, we say land and sea, like Tim and Tom. So both of them makes the subject. And they met where? Where did they meet? Or where do they meet? They meet at this beach. So we say, this is a place. So the relative pronoun should refer to a place, not object, not subject. And the next one, I am intending to write a research. I'm intending to write a research. That's why I'm collecting the related books. That's the reason. That's why I am collecting the related books. Because we are talking about a reason, we use why. That's when. You can say that's when if you have a time expression in the first place here, in the first sentence. That's when I am collecting the related books. If you are talking about time expression in the first sentence, that's when would be possible. That's where I'm collecting the related books would be possible if you are talking about a place in the first sentence. But we are not talking about time, we are not talking about a place, we are talking about the reason. I am intending to write a research. That's the reason why I am collecting the related books. That's simple, I think. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Number 6. There is a good reason. Again, we have the word reason here. So you can understand that we need why. That's the reason why I wanted to talk with you alone. This is very simple, very easy, because we see the reason here, and this is a ministry exam question. It cannot be the object, it cannot be the subject. Anyway, let's analyze the sentence as well. So, I wanted, I is the subject, wanted is the verb. I wanted to talk with you alone. So, the thing that comes here is not the object, cannot be the object, because I wanted to talk with you alone. It doesn't need an object. This verb here, I wanted to talk with you, doesn't need an object. So the relative pronoun that you put here is not object, shouldn't be the object. And because we have reason here, we simply say why. Next one, I don't like the places people smoke a lot. Ministry exam question, so most probably because we have the word place here, the answer should be where. I don't like places where people smoke a lot, but let's check it whether it's correct or not. So can we ask the question, where do people smoke a lot? Yes, we can. So we can ask the question using the question word where. So it means we are referring to a place, not object, not subject. So the answer is where. And the next one, number 8. This is the park I first met you. Okay, I, subject, meet is the verb, you is the object. I, subject, you, object. So the relative pronoun that I write here in this blank is not an object or subject, cannot be, because we have a subject already and a verb already in the sentence, in the clause here. So the park is a place, as you know, so we can directly choose where. This is the park where I first met you. Where did I meet you first? If you can ask this question using the question word where, it means we're talking about a place. Okay, this is the park where I first met you. So this is our answer. Number 9. I was the person who interviewed him. So that's why I know him well. So I said why, because this is the best answer that makes sense. But let's check it. That's where I know him well doesn't make sense, because where refers to place. That's where I know him well. Okay, it doesn't make sense. That's when I know him well. That's when I got to know him well would make sense, but in that case, I need to change the first sentence. I need to use time expression here, a time reference, so that when could refer to it, to the time reference, but we don't have it here. And who is not possible as well. That's who I know him well doesn't make sense, because we are referring to the whole first sentence as reason, as a reason of knowing him well. So I'm not referring to a person who is not correct. And 10, we started to build a new office where we can start our business. Yes, office. a building, a room, might be a place, but it might be object or subject as well. In that case, we won't use where. But I say the answer is where, but we need to make sure. We need to check it. Let's check. We started to build a new office. Who we can start our business. So we is the subject. Can start is the verb. Our business is the object. What do we start? We start a business. We start a new business, our business. That's object. We is subject. We have subject and an object already in the sentence. Okay? So the relative clause, the relative pronoun that I write here cannot be subject or object because we have both of them already in the sentence. So then, who is not possible? Which is not possible? That is not possible because it is not object or subject. Because office is a place, I choose where. That's correct. Okay, now if we change the first part again, let's say again, we can use when maybe. For example, when we start our business. That's the time when we start our business, for example. That's the reason why we can start our business. Okay, if you write here a time expression, you can use when. If you write here a reason, you can use why. But I simply, we have a place here. We started to build a new office. It's not reason, it's not a time expression, it's a place only. So we use when. And the next one, this is a little way. Now, I will try to hurry up a little bit, not to make the video too long. And probably I will need to prepare a second video for the rest of the grammar. So let me finish quickly. This is the little bay where I lived since I was born. I lived since I was born. Where did I live since I was born? Where did I live? If you ask this question, you will see that we are talking about a place, and you will simply mark A as the correct answer. And the next one, do you remember the exact date we have to hand in the essay? So we have to hand in the essay. When do we have to hand in the essay? We're talking about date. We are talking about time expression, time reference. So the answer should be when. And next one, I didn't get a pay rise, but this wasn't the reason why I left. So I left my job, for example. And I'm talking about the reason here. I say that this is not the reason. I didn't get a pay rise, but this is not the reason why I left my job. Why I left my job. My job is not here, but you can continue the sentence like that. I left. I left what? I left my job, most probably. And you are talking about the reason here. Wasn't the reason why I left. So you simply say why. I is subject, leave is the verb. And next one, meanwhile, leave is a transitive and intransitive verb. So in this sentence, they didn't use the object here, but if you use the object, you would say, I left my job, for example, my work or whatever. But you can use it without an object as well. I left is possible without object. And number 14, that's the village my father was born. My father was born. Where was my father born? My father was born in this village, in that village. So we are talking about place. Where is the answer. He wasn't looking forward to the moment when we would have to leave. Yes, we as subject would have to leave is the verb. We would have to leave. Leave what? Leave again is a transitive and intransitive verb. We can use an object, and we can use it in a sentence without an object as well. I left early yesterday. I left early what? I left work, or I left home early. Home is object, but if you say I left early, it doesn't have an object. So in this sentence, again, we don't have and we don't need an object. So we are referring to time, the moment when we would have to leave. Next one, the bookstore. Bookstore, most probably, we are talking about a place. There's a ministry exam question. They don't use it as object or subject in the ministry exam questions. But again, we need to make sure the bookstore Zana worked was filled with useful books. Where? So we can ask the question, where does Zana work? Or where did Zana work? Where did Zana work? As you can see, we can use the question word where to ask the question. So it means we are talking about a place. He worked in that bookstore. That would be the answer. So the bookstore, we are talking about it, or we are referring to the bookstore as a place. So we say where. And the rest of the questions are not ministry exam questions, but let me see whether we have examples where we use the relative pronoun as object or subject. We had the accident, was terrible. The day when we had. It's time. The bad weather is the reason why I was late. Reason. My grandfather remembers the time when there was no television. It's time again. My home is a place where I relax after work. We refer to place again. Dan says he'll always remember the day when his parents first bought him a bike for his birthday. Time. Again. That's the drawer. I keep my jewelry. That's the drawer where I keep my jewelry. It's a place. How do we understand? You can ask the question, where do I keep my jewelry? Where do I keep my jewelry? I keep my jewelry in that drawer. So in this context, in this sentence, we talk about the drawer as a place to hide something. And the last one, this is a cafe. Now, you can see the verb here immediately after the blank. That's important. Immediately after the blank. It means the relative pronoun that you write here must be subject because it comes immediately before the verb. Immediately before the verb. So the cafe here is not a place. We are not referring to it as a place. We are referring to the cafe as the subject. And the only possible answer is which, because we don't have that. That is possible, but it's not among the answers here. So the answer is which. Okay, I'm finishing the lesson now, and we'll record a second one for page 43 because I think it will be too long. I need to divide into parts otherwise.